Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. My name is Greer Luce. I am the Curator of Education and Public Programs here at Morven, and I'm very excited to introduce tonight's speaker and our program this evening, The Garden State Where Ideas Grow. This program is proudly presented in conjunction with Morven's current exhibition, Ma Bell, the Mother of Invention in New Jersey, which closes on March 5th, by the way. So if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, I highly encourage you to do so. As tonight's talk will show, the innovations of Bell Labs were not the only inventions to come out of the Garden State. And now I'll share a brief bio for our wonderful speaker, Linda Barth. Linda Barth has been a fan of New Jersey for a long time. A lifelong resident of the Garden State, Linda has written many books, which she asked me not to list all of them. So I'm going to try and shorten it up. But she's written 2 books on the D&R Canal and 3 children's books. She has also authored A History of Inventing in New Jersey, from Thomas Edison to the Ice Cream Cone, and New Jersey Originals. With her husband, she has published several books as well. And she's also contributed to the Encyclopedia of New Jersey. Linda spent 45 years in the Bridgewater-Raritan School District, teaching 4th grade, and then substituting after retirement. She is the executive director of the League of Historical Societies of New Jersey and the president of the D&R Canal Watch. So I'm happy to introduce Linda Barth. Thank you.
Really great. So anyone here a lifelong resident of New Jersey? Not many. Well, I think whether you are or not, you're going to see how many inventions were created here. It's just an amazing thing. I'll do a little of Edison and Bell Labs, but they have their own programs by other people. So there's so many other wonderful things. Here's just a taste of what we're going to see. That's a 1907 label that Campbell sent to me. So the light bulb. So who invented that? Well, yes and no. Thomas Edison didn't invent the first light bulb. Other people did, but if it only lasts for a couple of hours and you have to go to the store and buy another one, then what use is it? So he invents one that lasts a very long time. Now this is I bought at Edison's home in Fort Myers. It's a light bulb, but it's also another New Jersey invention. It has M&Ms inside. But I can't eat them because it's sealed up. Oh well. That's life. So let's see what other little tidbits we have. Bubble wrap. That's my metal Band-Aid can. I don't think you can buy Band-Aids in a metal can anymore. All right. Let's look at entertainment inventions. Here's a couple of examples. Film. Remember we used to take pictures with film? Some of you are too young to remember that. Before we had cell phones. Film. It was very hard to get a picture of a roll of film, but we found one finally. Invented by the Reverend Hannibal Goodwin of Newark. He was tired of doing Sunday school lessons with glass plate negatives, which would invariably fall and break. So he mixed up some chemicals and came up with film. The Goliath of the story is Eastman Kodak, which was immediately suing him, saying, no, 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 we're the inventor. But the judge ruled in favor of the Reverend Goodwin. He has the patent. He is the inventor. Edison had the kinetograph and the kinetoscope. So a movie is spooling around inside the cabinet, and this gentleman is listening to music. I don't think they were called earbuds then, and watching a 90-second movie. You can see 90-second videos now. If you go on the New Jersey Historical Commission website, they'll have like 90 seconds of a little piece of history. The State House being taken over, or Woodrow Wilson, or almost anything. The drive-in. The drive-in. I believe we have one, unless they sneaked another one in I don't know about. So the drive-in supposedly was started when Richard Hollingshead's mother, a big woman, complained, you know, it's so uncomfortable in those movie theater seats. If only I could stay in my car and watch the movies. Well, this gave him the idea. I have to find his exact quote. And he took his car, raised it up, put a projector on the roof, on the hood, used a lawn sprinkler for water, and experimented for 5 years before he had it done. And his motto was, "The whole family is welcome, no matter how noisy the children are." Not to be outdone, Ed Brown creates the Fly-In Drive-In movie next to a little airport in Asbury Park. So the planes would taxi in behind the cars, watch the movie, and then be towed back to the airport. This is the only one we heard of, so I don't think this caught on. Edison. Edison wanted a way to record sound forever. And he finally did. There he's sitting with his first record player, or phonograph. But he had the idea of putting the phonograph in the doll to make a talking doll. There's one at the Edison National Historic Park in West Orange. They're about 3 feet tall. But he had no idea how rough little girls were with dolls. Every one was returned to him broken. He was very annoyed. When he was an older gentleman, he was asked, "What is the first thing you recorded?" And this is him speaking.
The first words I spoke in the original phonograph. A little piece of practical poetry. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
And that is the first thing he recorded. Of course, the records were cylindrical to fit on this part of the phonograph. Later on, RCA Victor came out with disc-shaped records. Les Paul, not a native of New Jersey, but he lived in Mahwah for a very long time. Even as a boy, he was inventive. He figured out how to play the harmonica hands-free so he could still play the guitar. And later on in clubs, sometimes people were noisy, clinking their glasses, and he wanted to amplify his guitar. So he actually took a piece of pine that he called the log, electrified it, and voila, the solid body electric guitar is born, rock and roll not far behind. And he also experimented with his wife, Mary Ford, with overdubbing and different harmonies when they were singing. Communications. Whoops, wrong button. This is no longer in the exhibit, right? No. A Telstar was there for a while, one of the original 4 Telstars. The touch-tone phone, the cell phone, and this. What is this? Come on, someone has to guess. What? Telegraph? It is the telegraph. You're the first person who did not say the electric chair. Thank you. And there's the hint. Okay, you can stop now. All right. The telegraph, we know, or we always hear, is invented by Samuel F.B. Morse. But that's not the whole story. Morse was an artist, and when he was studying art in England, he wished he could communicate faster with his family back here. Then later, when he was married and living in Connecticut, he had to take a trip to D.C. And he had no way to know that while he was gone, his wife had died. And when he got home, the funeral was over. So these may have been things that inspired him to want to communicate over great distances. But he was an artist, not a mechanic. So he came to New Jersey, to the Speedwell Iron Works in Morristown, and he hired the Vales, Alfred and his father, mostly Alfred, because they knew how to build things. So here was the deal. I'm going to read this so you know exactly what they agreed to. He had them promise that Alfred would construct a model of the telegraph at his own expense, and the Vale family would also pay for the cost of the patent. But the patent would be taken out in the name of and for the exclusive benefit of Samuel F.B. Morse. Morse never had any much money, so he was probably glad to have this. So they experimented. When they were ready, they stuck lots of nails in the wall, put the wire back and forth across the nails, went in the other room and sent a message. It worked. Then they invited the public and the press in, sent the message, "Railroad cars just arrived, 245 passengers." Voila, they can do it. Still decades before telegraph poles crossed the country, but this is certainly the start. And then there's the matter of the code, the Morse code. Well, Morse had a different idea. His idea was to number 30,000 words in the dictionary, then transmit those numbers, and the telegrapher on the other end, well, he could figure out what number went with what word. And Alfred Vail said, no, too confusing, too complicated. Let's just use a dot and dash alphabet. And on Alfred Vail's gravestone, it says, father of the dot and dash alphabet. No one it's a county park now, Speedwell. No one there can explain why he ever agreed to Vail's demands, but they did. Alfred Vail never really said in public how much he had done. And if you say his name in jeopardy instead of Morse, you'd probably be wrong. Although they did have Alfred Vail on a few months ago. They had him in a clue. I was very excited. Telstar, the first communication satellite, made by Bell Labs. As you see, if you go to the exhibit, there were Bell Labs facilities all over the place, not just the 2 or 3 that I know of. Touch tone. In the olden days, well, not that old. Let's see if this works. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Let's do this one. Pretend you didn't hear that. Phones used to do this. But with touch tone, no, come back. Technology is a wonderful thing. But with touch tone, it went like that. Now, here's the old phone. In fact, upstairs in the mansion, in the exhibit, for those who don't know, they have this, and they have directions. Put finger in hole, move to stopper, for those who never used one. So this is the new touch tone. How is this different from the old phone? You didn't know you'd have to answer questions. Huh?
It creates a pulse sound.
Right, has a different sound, much different sound. What about here? What's missing right here? No fair looking at your phone. What's missing right here? The hashtag and the star, exactly. Because at first the engineers thought they only needed the digits, but as the computer age was coming in, they realized maybe they should put those 2 symbols in. The cell phone. The man on the right is the inventor. His buddy is on the left holding the cell phone. It looks like a brick, doesn't it? If you look at movies from the 80s, people are walking around with these giant mobile phones, and in the very beginning, the equipment had to fit in the trunk of your car. Amos Joel's task at Bell Labs was to find a way to reuse frequencies. He did. We can call anywhere in the world. But let's look at food. This is not the hot dog. This is the grill that turns. All right. The ice cream cone. Italo Marchionni had a push cart like that. And on hot summer days, he would sell ice cream in glass containers. But people would forget, and they would walk away with the glass container. Now he has nothing. So he invented an edible container. But still, he was running out of them. So he got a patent for a machine that made multiple edible containers at the same time. Now, he can make many more. Many people think that the ice cream cone was invented at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1906. Note the date here, when an unknown ice cream seller ran out of cones and asked the waffle maker next door for some. But the unknown ice cream seller was our own Italo Marchionni, who had his patent 6 months before the fair opened. Ah, my favorite. M&M's, still made in Hackettstown. You can drive by and smell the chocolate, but you cannot get a tour. Believe me, I have tried. The Mars family was a candy-making family. Forrest had seen in Europe a shell-covered candy that he wanted to try to duplicate. So he partnered with Bruce Murray of Hershey, because at that time, only Hershey had a government contract for chocolate. So they came up with what they liked. They named it for their last initials, and they added the apostrophe because it belongs to them. If you go there, you cannot take a tour, but occasionally a reporter will be let in, but he still is not allowed to go into the room where the M is placed on the candy. That is a secret. The Mars family is one of the richest families in New Jersey, for obvious reasons. It started out with just certain specific colors. In fact, it started out right as World War II was breaking out. And even in the hot tropics, M&Ms were put in the ration packets because, as we know, M&Ms melts in your mouth, not in your hand. See, you knew that. The first colors were brown, yellow, orange, red, green, and violet. Violet was later replaced by tan. And as of 1999, Forest Mars was worth about $4 billion. The blueberry. Elizabeth White and her father had a cranberry plantation in the Pine Barrens, but she felt that blueberries, which grew wild, could be a farm crop. So she sent people out in the Pine Barrens to bring the best plants and the biggest berries, and she planted them on the farm, and voila, it worked. She called them true blueberries, and she was the first to put cellophane around the little basket. You can go to White's Bog. They're restoring that little farming village right now. Campbell's is much older than this date. It started when a fruit seller and an ice box maker shook hands and started the Anderson and Campbell Company. But when John Durrance came along as a chemist, he realized that there was a problem. If he shipped out to the stores this soup, he would lose money because it was so heavy. And what is the heaviest ingredient in this soup? Water. So if he could take out the water, then ship it, and then you, the homeowner, put the water back in, he makes more money, and you have condensed soup. Down the street from me, in the town of Bound Brook, the Reverend Graham was the minister for a while, and he favored whole wheat everything, and he cleverly made a cracker named for himself, the Graham cracker. Bosco. Bosco is kind of like the poor man's Hershey syrup. Has a funny name. Because it has a funny name, it was the subject of a Seinfeld episode or two. But it was created by an unknown South Jersey doctor to put weight on his underweight patients. I should have such a problem. It is now made in Morris County at Seabreeze, I believe is the company. And early on, when movies were in black and white, Bosco was often used for blood. So if you watch Psycho, you see a lot of Janet Leigh screaming and Bosco going down the drain. In Warren Township, Somerset County, and just as around here, places that used to be farms are now growing houses, we know. But Camillo Epstein had a chicken farm, and people knocked on his door at all hours of the day and night to buy eggs. Well, this became annoying. So he put out at the corner the egg-o-mat, kind of like an automat for eggs. You would put in your nickel, dime, quarter, or 35 cents, and out would come the size of eggs you paid for. In fact, the egg-o-mat is now in the Public Works garage, and I just found out the Historic Preservation Committee of the town is now trying to figure out how to make it work again, which I think would be great fun. And of course, Yogi was the spokesperson for Yoo-Hoo. Enough said about that. Ben Tabachnik, whose soups you might see in the supermarket, heard that people were starving in the Horn of Africa, and he created a very nutritious little therapeutic food with peanut butter and other nutritious things that could be quickly handed out to people. They didn't have to walk all the way to a clinic, and that sort of proved to be very useful. Now not every invention is high-tech. I'm going to pass these around. I would like somebody at the back to hold on to them so I could have them back. This is not the least high-tech you will see, but this is one of them. Dawn, whoa. You'll fix it. Dawn was tired of her children dripping ice pops all over their clothing. What could she do? What could she do? So she creates a spongy little item with a slit in the middle for the stick. Then it drips onto this, the dripster, and she can rinse it off and use it again. If you see a problem, and you can come up with a solution, you're the inventor. It doesn't have to be electronic, something or other. It can be this, a simple thing. The dripster. Speaking of,
Where can you buy them?
you can, I have to call her and get them. I have to write to her and she sends me more. I don't think you can buy them, but that would be good if you could. Speaking of simple, thank you. This is pretty simple, a piece of wood with a hole in the middle. That's it. That's it. Jason Friedenfeld was in 4th grade in Madison, New Jersey. They had an invention convention. He thought, what can I invent for the contest? And he remembered that his family always turned the salad dressing bottle upside down and it always fell over. So he tried to first do wires to hold it up, but that was too complicated. So this is what he made. The tippy bottle stabilizer. He won the contest. He got a patent. He actually has a patent. And he went on to bigger and better things. He now works for Google and is the global communications manager. Starting with this invention. Quite amazing. Things that just make your life more interesting. Things you probably know, but where did they come from? Plastic. Imagine a time when we did not have plastic. That time was back in the 1870s. The people who made pool balls were running out of ivory, and they offered $10,000 in 1870, $10,000 if someone could create a substitute for ivory. So James and John went into their landlady's kitchen, mixed up chemicals, and came up with what they called celluloid, the first successful plastic. But they didn't stop with pool balls. They used it for knife handles, piano keys, dentures, and removable collars and cuffs. Because in 1870, you didn't just throw the clothes in the washer and walk away. Doing the laundry was an all-day affair. The part of the shirt that gets the dirtiest, the collar and the cuff. So if you can just take this off, sponge it off, and put it back on, you don't have to wash the whole shirt every time. The next plastic is Bakelite. Leo Baekeland came from Belgium and created Bakelite, which was great for the radio and television industry because it was non-conductive. But somehow over the years, it became a jewelry collectible. And the Somerville Antique Center let us take this picture of Bakelite bracelets. Bubble wrap. My husband loves bubble wrap. He could pop it all the time. Mark and Al had created a way to make a little air pillows in plastic. Okay, that's fine, but what will we do with it? They tried putting it on wallpaper, but by then vinyl wallpaper had come in and really didn't need it. So then they used it in greenhouses, not very popular. Finally, the light dawned, we can use it to wrap fragile packages. So great-grandma's teapot could go to Cousin Emily in one piece. Now, of course, you can get it in any size, from minute to big, any color. Their little company became Sealed Air, $1 billion company. And you can get an app for your phone and you can pop bubble wrap all day. I had it for 5 minutes and that was a big enough waste of time. But you can do that. Enjoy yourself. The boardwalk, not named for Mr. Boardman. The boardwalk created because of a 4-letter word. And what was that? Sorry, it's not a swear word.
Sand.
Sand. It was everywhere in Atlantic City. Hotels, restaurants, trains. The town fathers gave the job to Alexander and Jacob and said, find a solution to keep the sand out. Their solution was to make a walkway of boards with spaces between, so the sand would come off your feet and back onto the beach. The first one was 10 feet wide, but only 1 foot above the sand. So there was no going under the boardwalk. And it worked. It did keep the sand out of all those establishments. Now, we thought, I wonder what the longest boardwalk in New Jersey is. So my husband, who's very clever, said, well, let's go and measure every one. Okay. or just call the Public Works Department. But it turns out it is Atlantic City, which has a very, very long, I can't tell you how many miles. Atlantic City. We thought it was Wildwood, but they said, not us. The barcode. The barcode is everywhere, just like plastic is everywhere. And the first number in the barcode for books is 9. I think that's also for newspapers. So the first number is a category. The first one was made by Norman Joseph Woodland at IBM. He made a round one because he felt that there should be a way to speed up supermarket checkout and help the store do inventory. But the round doesn't always print. Sometimes it warps a little bit. So someone, not from New Jersey, created the horizontal one. And I learned that it's not just the black, but the white stripes as well that are red. But what good is it if you can't read it? So Harry Knowles creates the handheld scanner. Not the supermarket scanner, but the one in the Hallmark store or the library. And what is that? What is that? So if you walk out of the store and that is still attached, alarms may sound. Philip Anderson is a teacher at Ramapo and creates this. We did call Kohl's ahead of time to ask if we could go in and take a picture of this so they wouldn't think we were dangerous strangers, and they allowed us. The vacuum cleaner. David T. Kenny, the father of the vacuum cleaner industry. He made a small vacuum for your home, and he applied for a patent. And he waited, didn't hear from the government. So while he was waiting, he made a big vacuum that could go in the bottom of a tall building with pipes and tubes to suck out the dirt. Meanwhile, he's still waiting for his home vacuum patent, so we asked the Sisters of Mercy to pray for him. Apparently they did. He got his patent, and he gave to them a beautiful piece of land in the Watchung Mountains, now the home of Mount St. Mary Girls Academy, and they know who their benefactor is. I would normally say that academy is across from Sears, but there is no more Sears, so. It's on Route 22 in Watchung. Lillian and Frank. I love Lillian and Frank. The Gilbreths were time study experts. So they would go into a factory, observe how people did their job, and suggest more efficient methods. They also taught industrial people. They taught their classes in their house in Montclair. Now, Lillian was an inventor, an author, an industrial engineer, an industrial psychologist, and the mother of 12 children. What more could one woman do, really? When they got married, Frank said, I would like 12 children, and I would like 6 of each. And that is what they got. Being an efficiency expert, he had a system that if he wanted everybody to see everybody at the same time, he would go out front and blow a whistle, and within seconds, not minutes, everybody had to be out there. And they were. One of their children wrote Cheaper by the Dozen, a kind of a funny book. Among Lillian's inventions were the you step on the pedal, the lid pops up trash can. I think of it every time I go in a room where there's one of those, I think of her. And putting shelves in the door of the refrigerator. Now, what wasted space that must have been before. But now you have shelves. Air conditioning. We thank Willis Carrier for that. The printing and the textile industries were having trouble having the colors set because somehow they thought it was humid in New Jersey. Maybe. So they asked Willis to find a way to treat the air. So he pooled his money with a few partners and came up with air conditioning. And in the dead of summer, we're happy to have it. The string thing. Now, this is the really, really less high tech. Where's the good one that can come apart? So this is what this is. If you think it's a piece of string with a piece of cardboard, you're right. And as you can see, whoops, as you can see, it is used to tie up your newspapers. And that's exactly what it does. David and his Aunt Virginia got a patent for the string thing. He gave me a whole lot of them. But now my county has said we don't have to do that anymore. We can throw all the paper together in the barrel for recycling. So now I have lots of these. If anyone wants one, you may have one. Tons of these. So there you go, not high tech. Somebody with an idea comes up with a solution. It has a hole and a couple of notches and string. That's it. Play-Doh. Around central New Jersey, you might hear the name Zufall Health, Women's Health. That's the same lady. She was a nursery school teacher, and her brother-in-law made wallpaper cleaner. But when vinyl wallpaper came along, he said, I'm not going to make this. She said, no, don't stop making it. My kids love to mold it. Maybe just change the ingredients, make sure it has a nice smell. But what to call it? They came up with Play-Doh and how to get people to know it exists. They made a deal with Captain Kangaroo that he would use Play-Doh on his show and he would get 2% of the profits. It was also on Ding Dong School and Romper Room. Which makes me wonder why I went to school all day and then came home and watched school on television. I don't know. Monopoly, too long of a story, but probably not invented by Charles Darrow, who made millions and who has a plaque on the boardwalk. Probably he saw someone else playing it, had a printer make the board, voila. He asked Parker Brothers to distribute it, and they said, are you nuts? There's 52 things wrong with your game, and it's too long. But eventually they did, when he made some changes. Now, most of these properties are streets in Atlantic City. What are the two that are not streets? Not counting the railroads. One is Ventnor, which is a town nearby, and one is Marvin Gardens, which is a neighborhood. The flexible flyer, the first steerable sled. A few years ago, the New Jersey Historical Commission had their conference, and the reception the night before was at the home of Senator Diane Allen on a beautiful piece of property at the Delaware River. But when I got the invitation, it said Senator Diane Allen and Samuel Leeds Allen III. I thought, he has to be a descendant. Well, they have his antique sleds hanging on the walls of their house. So that is. The original Samuel Leeds Allen had about 300 farming patents, but what to do with his employees in the off-season? Let's make a steerable sled. He even had one that folded up and you could take it on the trolley to your favorite hill. What is this clunky looking thing? Transistor. That is the first transistor. Doesn't look like it could fit in all your electronic devices in the beginning, but of course it's been miniaturized. Invented at Bell Labs by John and Walter, and then their boss came along and he got the credit too. They all got the Nobel. In fact, Murray Hill Bell Labs has a Nobel garden where they commemorate their 12 or 14 Nobelists. Probably will be more at some point. So without this, none of your electronic devices would be working. There are billions and billions of them in the world. Bell Labs also created solar panels, but way back in the 50s. It's only more recently that I've seen them all over the place. On D-Day, when the Allies took the beaches at Normandy with great loss, their next task was to liberate Paris. But how to get there? The French had built very thick hedge rows all along every road, and the tanks could not get through them. It would make the tanks turn up and be subject to enemy fire. But Curtis and his friends, standing around the beach, looking to solve a problem, took some debris, welded it to the front of the tank, and it whipped right through the hedgerows. General Bradley ordered 200 Sherman tanks equipped with this. One person looking around to solve a problem, and he does. And look what that brought after that, victory. Sports. Baseball. No, baseball was not invented in Cooperstown by Abner Doubleday. Abner Doubleday never claimed to have done that. Now Cooperstown has signs on the corners, and one of them explains how they are not the birthplace of baseball. So baseball invented when Alexander Cartwright and his team had to move out of Manhattan because the field was too expensive to rent, and they came to New Jersey. He said, here are the rules. If you don't want to play by these rules, that's fine. You don't have to play. Here are the new rules. 3 strikes and you're out. 3 outs every half inning. We will have fair and foul territory. We will have an umpire. We will get rid of the rule that said you may throw the ball at the runner. Good. And you will be fined for cursing. Perhaps a rule that we could reinstate. It's fun in the summer. We have in New Jersey about 10 or 12 vintage teams. They play in this. They don't wear gloves. They use their old uniforms. There is an umpire, usually in a top hat. And it's fun to watch them play. They're usually at a historic site or a park in town. There's the Elizabeth Resolutes, the Neshannocks. The Liberty plays at East Jersey Old Town. So lots going on. And you can enjoy a game, but don't get fined for swearing. And who knew we have baseball rubbing mud? This is a true thing. When baseballs come out of the factory, they are too shiny to use. So umpires would always rub them with dirt, usually just dirt from the field, but it might tend to discolor it, loosen the cover, allowing for tampering. They were beside themselves. What to do? So Russell Blackburn, a player and coach, said, you know, there's a stream by my house in South Jersey. It's a tributary of the Delaware. Let me bring in you some of that mud. He did. The umpires loved it. It was perfect. It didn't harm the ball. And Russell was in the mud supply business. This was in the paper this summer. This is Jim, the 4th generation. And no, we may not know where this is. It is a secret. Every fall, mud is harvested. Who knew mud could be harvested? Aged over the winter, and in the spring, sent to Major League, Minor League, and college baseball teams, rubbing mud. There was just I saw a movie about a gentleman at one of the ballparks, and Major League ballparks, and that's his job, is to rub the balls before the game and put them in a humidifier so they'll all stay the same. We had one of the early catcher's masks, and we had the golf tee invented here. This gentleman and this gentleman were both dentists and used their tools to carve a tee. Dr. Lowell, when he first played, I think at Montclair Golf Course, he saw people making a little pile of dirt to put the ball on. He went, ew. So he created the tee. At first, it was not accepted by golfers, but now, of course, it is. And the smallest ball in sports is probably the marble. We are lucky to host the national tournament every year on the beach in Wildwood, starting in 1923. You can see people are very intense. If you play marbles, you are a mibster, M-I-B, mibster. I don't think anyone here can be on the tournament. You must be between 7 and 14 years of age. And yes, the first sports bra was here, but we're not going to go into that. You can read that on your own. Transportation. Coming in here from the left is the first, and I think only, steerable balloon. Solomon Andrews asked the question, if you take a hot air balloon ride, how are you getting home? You go where the wind takes you. But he created one that steers. One was like 3 cigars, and this one's more like a lemon shape. He asked, he supposedly went from Perth Amboy to New York and back, and he asked President Lincoln, do you want me to use this to spy on the Confederates? But he never heard from the president. All right, water inventions, water transportation. Stevens Tech in Hoboken is on their estate. Stevens, a very inventive family. John, the father, invents a steam-powered boat. And he was going to have the first steam-powered taxi ferry service across the Hudson. But that was a monopoly run by Fulton and Livingston. So he took his boat through the Atlantic and around to Delaware River and had his ferry service there. The first modern submarine, not the first submarine ever. There was one in the Revolutionary War, not too effective. So finally, John Holland, a teacher in Paterson, creates the submarine. He tested it in the Passaic River, submerged it for an hour, it worked, and he went on with partners to build bigger and bigger ones, waiting for the Navy to accept it. Finally, the Navy did. He took it not in the ocean, but through the intracoastal waterway, including the D&R Canal. Here it is on pontoons going through the canal. And here is the inventor sticking his head through the hatch. We lost that picture in Hurricane Floyd from our museum, but the Patterson Museum kindly gave us another. The Lake family also did a submarine up in the North Shore by the Highlands and Atlantic Highlands, and theirs had wheels so they could roll around the ocean floor, and supposedly a door where they could bring in their favorite seafood. Although I'm not clear how they kept the ocean from coming into, probably had an airlock of some sort. Back to the Stevenses, on their estate, they had a track so they could run their first steam locomotive, and they could take people for rides on it. Son Robert creates, in 1826, almost 200 years ago, the best shape for rail, the T shape. Before, they used to nail metal onto wood, not too effective. This picture and the next picture come from your state archives. So this is the first traffic circle. So what is missing from this picture? Traffic. Where is the traffic? But somebody in the 20s thought that we would have traffic in New Jersey. Very prescient. This is the airport circle. See, there are airplanes here. And the first clover leaf, the way you get on and off the interstate. This is in Woodbridge, where routes 1 and 9 meet Route 35.
Still looks like that.
Yeah, it still looks exactly like that, if you don't count every franchise known to man, hotels, restaurants, stores. But this is a actual neighborhood right there. But what else is missing? The cars. Again, created before we had the need for it, maybe. There are a few cars there, but not like we see today. The Jersey barrier. They're all over the world now, but they started right here, hence their name. If you're going to eastern Pennsylvania, now you can take Route 78 west across Jugtown Mountain. But before that, the engineers built a road to go over the mountain, but it had to have a lot of curves to go over the mountain. And they were afraid, literally, that people would go out of their lane accidentally. So they lined the center line with Jersey barriers. And there is a historic marker right next to this road. Now it's a service road. It's 173 or 9, isn't it? 173. Medical. The Band-Aid. No, not invented by Johnson & Johnson, but invented by Errol Dixon, who worked for the company. He was a cotton buyer. But every time he came home for dinner, his wife Josephine, not a good cook, would have a burn or a cut or a scrape. And he would have to take a piece of adhesive, take a piece of cotton. Well, this became tiresome. So he took a long piece of adhesive, ran cotton down the center, and each night just cut off what she needed. It's a good thing he didn't just hire a cook, or we wouldn't have Band-Aids. He later took it to the Johnson brothers, and they liked it. And now, of course, you can have SpongeBob or Harry Potter or anyone you want on your Band-Aids. Maybe someone here has a New Jersey low contact stress total knee replacement. I'm not quite up to that, but I hope not to be. Invented by Mr. Pappas and Mr. Beekle, and they also did replacements for ankles, shoulders, and hips. Streptomycin, the first wonder drug. The first time that tuberculosis could be cured after it had killed millions and millions of people. It was also effective against the plague and typhus. Now, Albert Schatz was a Rutgers graduate student. He was studying soil because scientists knew that there were a lot of very helpful microbes in soil, and he found what created this drug. But shortly thereafter, his teacher, Selman Waxman, came in and he claimed credit. This is still a controversy at Rutgers, who they both got the Nobel, but who is really the inventor? The microbiology school is named for Selman Waxman, but you can decide. Virginia Apgar was a Westfield doctor who created a 5-point scale for immediately measuring the health of newborns, still used today. A sidelight, she was also a violinist and a violist. She liked to build her own violas. And when she was working at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York, she saw a phone booth, and the seat was exactly what she needed to make a viola. She was going to replace it. And she went through channels, and everyone said no, she could not have it. So she did a midnight run with a student and took the piece she wanted and made a viola. I love that. Dominic Richter had heart surgery and thought there must be a better way. Created the stent, which holds your arteries open. I have one right around here somewhere. It was very easy to have put in. I was awake. I could hear what they were saying. Done. And finally, manufacturing. Coming in is a locomotive. But first, let's look at Seth Boyden. Who knows Seth Boyden? Almost no one does. But if you read John Cunningham's, any of his New Jersey history books, you will likely find Seth Boyden. He was an inventor, but he didn't want any money. He didn't really want patents, and he would get bored after a while of what he invented, and he would go on to other things. So he invented patent leather, then went on to other things, didn't get a patent for it, invented malleable iron, made a steam locomotive, and he died penniless, but he was very well known. But you can see from the center that he has a statue in Washington Park in Newark. And at the dedication of that statue, Edison said he was one of America's greatest inventors. His great and many practical inventions have been the basis for industries which give employment to millions. Seth Boyden. So if Edison says you're good, I guess you're good. John Ryle came from the silk-making city of Macclesfield, England, and his task was to make the first skein of silk in the United States, which he did in Paterson. So why is Paterson such a font of invention and manufacture? From the falls. And today it is your newest national park. It is Paterson Great Falls National Historic Park. And the rangers will show you the series of channels or raceways that brought the water from the river to power all the different factories. One of which was Rogers Locomotive. In fact, the park ranger said there weren't 3 companies making locomotives in Paterson. There were probably 7 or 8, all making locomotives in the age of steam. That's incredible to me. And finally, John Augustus Roebling. Roebling came from Pennsylvania, from Germany first, to Western Pennsylvania. But he wasn't successful as a farmer. So he created a way to twist wire and make a very strong cable. He called it wire rope. The first place he offered it to was the Pennsylvania Mainline Canal. Now, canal boats like to go on the level. And there's a big obstacle in the middle of Pennsylvania. What is that? The mountains. The canal boats, they really don't like to go up and down mountains. But the canal company put them on carriers attached by a heavy rope to a steam engine, not just once, but at all the different peaks that they had to go over. But rope has a tendency to break, and then it's a fast ride downhill. Roebling said, try my wire rope. It worked perfectly, it didn't break, very strong. If you're going across Pennsylvania and need a place to stop for a break, go to the Allegheny Portage National Railroad site. Very interesting. So Roebling decides to move his whole factory to Trenton because he has canal, riverboat traffic, trains, and he's near the steel mill. Perfect. Here's a comparison between the old rope and his wire rope. He moved his factory to Trenton and made machines that would twist the wire. Here's one of his early bridges, the Covington-Cincinnati Bridge over the Ohio. In fact, he built a railroad bridge over the Niagara River, not over the falls, but over the river. And everyone gathered around to watch it fall when the first train came over, but of course, it did not. Some New Jersey examples of Roebling wire are the Morris Canal, which used this to take boats up and down the inclined plains. This little bridge out on next to the Delaware River, and the Regalsville Bridge, which we just went over to have dinner in the Regalsville Inn in Pensy. So finally, his big final project, the Brooklyn Bridge or the East River Bridge. As Roebling was planning the construction, he was standing on a dock, a boat hit it, his foot was crushed, and he died in weeks of tetanus. The project was taken over by his son, Washington Roebling, a former Civil War officer. After a few years, Washington was coming up too fast from the caissons under the East River, and he got the bends. It didn't kill him, but became an invalid, and he watched the project from his Brooklyn apartment. Well, now what? Who's going to finish it? He became an invalid, But fortunately, his smart, capable wife, Emily, became his assistant and communicated his ideas to the bridge engineers, the trustees, the contractors. It was she who steered this project to completion. She managed political bickering, attempts to oust her husband, technical difficulties, contractor fraud. He called her work invaluable. And if you walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, come on. Oh, maybe I'm pushing on something. Come on. We're frozen for the last picture. Help. I'll try going backwards. No. Thank you. If you walk across the bridge, you see this plaque. And whose name is first on the plaque? Emily Warren Roebling, whose courage and faith helped her stricken husband, Washington, complete the plans of his father, John Augustus Roebling. A friend of mine does a program called Bridge Builders in Petticoats, and that's her. So why are we the invention state? Any thoughts? Well, some people have suggested that in the early 1900s and late 1800s, a lot of very skilled people came to this country, and their skills maybe started this or continued it. So while we're here, let's just see if you know New Jersey state symbols. All right, what's the state shell? The conch, or the knobbed whelk. You can see the state animal. State flower. No, violet. State tree. Red oak, that is correct. State bird. State insect. State fish. There are lots of trouts. This is the brook trout. State fruit. State dance. And here is our state dinosaur, Hadrosaurus, found the first almost complete skeleton ever found. It was found in Haddonfield, New Jersey. This is a model because Philadelphia kept all the bones of the real one, and they still have them. They won't give them back. State tall ship is the A.J. Meerwald, an oyster schooner. It comes up from South Jersey every summer and gives you sails all around the Statue of Liberty. Quite lovely. The state ship, not tall ship, but the state ship. Battleship New Jersey. The state dog. No, don't say German Shepherd. Seeing eye, correct. I just found out we have a state reptile. It is the bog turtle. A state butterfly. I think it is the black swallowtail. And now we have a state microbe, the same microbe that Albert Schatz used to develop streptomycin. And there you have it. So thank you for coming, and I hope you learned a lot about New Jersey.
We do have a couple minutes for a few questions.
If I know anything.
So if anyone has any questions.
Yes, sir. He knows the way. I saw him last weekend.
I've got two questions.
Okay.
One's about Thomas Edison and his contributions to how the telephone was made. He came up with some kind of a microphone
in 1878. Right, the telephone was all well and good, but it was very hard to hear Bell's telephone. So Edison made, I think it is called a carbon button. It allowed much more amplification, so you could actually hear the person talking.
Okay, and second question is relates to John Stevens. I've heard that he's been described as the father of American railroading. Is that?
I don't know. I think that's an opinion, and I don't have an opinion on Mr. Stevens.
Okay, and of course there was a connection with Robert Field Stockton, right? With the two sons building the Camden and Amboy. Right,
Stockton from Morven was one of the partners building the D&R Canal and the New Jersey Camden and Amboy Railroad at the same time. The railroad was immediately bought out of all of its stock. The canal, not so popular to buy stock from, but he got his father-in-law to buy a lot of the stock, so the canal could be built.
Yeah, John Potter was.
Yeah,
a lot
Mr.
of-
Potter,
lot of money.
correct.
So was the Camden and Amboy the first railroad across New Jersey?
Yes. Not the first railroad ever, but the first railroad across New Jersey.
Thanks so much. It's illuminating and enjoyable and creative. I thoroughly enjoyed all of it. I did, having grown up as a teenager in northern New Jersey, in Milburn Short Hills and then Burnsville. The focal point of my, I won't say life, but in a way was the Sloppy Joe sandwich, which when I was in the Navy, I had one shipped out to Vietnam. In that day, there's dry ice, but this was delightful what you presented. But I must say about the Sloppy Joe, if any of you have had, I to this day I find it irresistible. It's not a grinder.
Is that a New Jersey invention?
Milburn delicatessen, but the actual, having done some research on this, Halls in South Orange, and then there's a website on it. If you look it up, Sloppy Joe, the reason I came across this, I was looking, spending very productive time of the 100 most famous sandwiches in America. And,
good research.
So I recommend it. I don't think we have Sloppy Joes in Princeton, but the Milburn delicatessen, I took my daughter there. She was unimpressed. But in any case, she was later impressed. As she was, when she was older, we went twice.
Of course.
Any case, I know you did kind of culinary, but I can think that's a great contribution.
And I also did not include the famous Taylor pork roll from Trenton, also known as Taylor ham.
You can get Philly steaks actually in Trenton. My daughter and I got them there. So I think that wonderful contributions New Jersey's made in technology.
I have to look
science.
into Sloppy Joes.
Beg pardon?
I'll look into the Sloppy Joes.
So take a look at that, and also that list of 100 top sandwiches.
Okay.
But it was to me one of the great contributions to Western civilization. Actually,
right.
The global life, Sloppy Joe. Thanks so much.
Thank
It was
you.
delightful.
And I believe that the jug handle is also invented here.
The jug handle.
Oh, great.
You mentioned briefly Yogi Berra. I don't know if you have been to the museum in
Absolutely.
Montclair.
Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center.
It's fun, and it has a whole rack of how the catcher's mitt evolved
Wow.
over starting with the
remember
very
that.
first one.
I remember that his quotes are all over the walls. You
Yeah.
see a fork in the road,
Yeah.
take it.
Our son was a catcher, so this was fun for us.
There you go. Yeah, he said if you see a fork in the road, take it, because his house was right at a fork, and that's what he would give people directions. When you see a fork in the road, take it. That's what his granddaughter said on a Zoom I just heard. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious if there's one town in New Jersey among all the 565 towns. I'm curious if there's one town among all the 565 towns that really stands out as the home of the most inventors of New Jersey.
I don't know. I would say Patterson probably had a lot. Trenton probably had a lot with all the potteries and Roebling. I don't know if there's just one.
I'd like to think Westfield may have been.
Oh, Westfield. Why
high up
are
on
you
the
voting
list.
for Westfield?
Well, I'm from Westfield.
Well, yeah, but do we have any inventions?
We had a good sloppy Joe at one time.
Well, when I go to the
Deli.
Westfield Library, I will ask that question. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you all for coming.
Oh, you got one more
Hold
question?
it, another question? Yes?
This is sort of like a statistics question.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, where does New Jersey stand in terms of the rest of the United States in terms of inventions?
I say
Has anyone
I
done?
say number one.
Well,
but
I
I
would
have
say
no
number
proof.
one too. But has anyone done a survey, some big data crunching thing of all the patents and where they came from?
Not to my knowledge. That would be a good job for you.
Well, no, I'm going to be spending the next couple of months working on the 100 sandwiches.
Oh, I love these people. These are great people. I love this.
Well,
All right.
Thank you so much, Linda. This was fabulous. And thank you all for coming out tonight and for those online
bet,
as
you
well. Take care and have a great rest of your week.
Is there another one of these floating around somewhere? Good. Feel free to have one.
Thank you very much.